Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands,
upcoming tours,
and show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
The Kendall Street Company interview, October 2022.
Kendall Street Company is an alt jam rock band based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. They have a unique instrumentation of electric guitar, acoustic guitar, sax, keys, bass, and drums. And they move seamlessly from acoustic singer-songwriter numbers to Steely Dan-esque funk before hitting a psychedelic jam or landing in a West Coast groove. We're so lucky to have them here today. They have quite a few new releases out over the past few years, which we'll get into. And why don't we say hi? I have Jake and Lewis here. How you doing today, guys?
Doing great and really well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, you nailed it.
Hey, thank you.
You nailed it. Nailed it on the description. That was nice.
I'm working on it. All right, let's take it from the top. The question that jumped out at me first is, what's up with the goat in the Say Hey video?
We were at the studio called White Star Studio in Louisa, Virginia, which is kind of between Richmond and Charlottesville. And there's also an active goat farm, as well as being a music studio. So there were there's 3 or 4 goats there?
Yeah, I think 3 goats. And they're just like hanging out outside the studio. So whenever we step out for a breath of fresh air, we hang out with the goats a little bit.
Nice.
They're a little fun and demonic too. I like the way the little tiny horns. Yeah. They don't have big horns. They don't make a little nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so
and their
cool.
eyes are crazy.
Ed, you were at the studio recording which album?
We've done a number of albums at that studio. In the Say Hey video, we were recording The Year the Earth Stood Still. I guess, but we recorded both parts, Ninurta and Inertia, during that session.
They were. I was going to ask this later, but let's jump into that. It's 2 albums for the people who don't know, and you released them 2 separate dates, right? The all instrumental was one date, and the one with the vocals was another date. But you did record them all in one shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we didn't know where they were going to be broken up until after the fact. So we recorded them, without any bias towards it, and then later on we made the division where we felt was necessary. And we cut a few things too. There were some ideas that were recorded that didn't get implemented in any way yet. So
right.
Yeah. And nothing was written before we went into the studio. We went in, and this was like in June, July of 2020.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, and so we were just ready to get in the studio and record, but we went in going, all right, we're gonna go in and just play and just see what we come up with, and we ended up writing 2 records, which was crazy. And recording, pretty much, writing and recording.
Right. I saw that you had listed your bass player, Brian, did all the lyrics for the one album with the lyrics. Is that correct?
Not all of them. He did Home and Garden. And then, if we pull up the track listing, I could tell you. Brian did Home and Garden. He did the stuff he sang on.
Yeah, when Brian sings, he typically writes the lyrics. Generally, when somebody sings in our band, they write the lyrics, but not always.
I sometimes sing some of Ben. Ben plays the electric guitar, and he writes songs, and I'll sing some of his songs sometimes.
Nice. So, is there a story? I saw it listed as a space opera. So, is there a loose story that you want to tell us about, or is it one of these? You listen to it and you make your own story?
We're pulling up the track listing right now. That'll help us tell the story a little bit. Okay.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It's fascinating to me when several people, different voices come together to tell a story I do this thing called What Plus,
Yeah.
and we kind of do that. There's 4 of us, and we all have our own thing and try to make it a whole. So that's fascinating, as opposed to like a Pete Townsend who writes everything. It's his vision,
Right.
it's thematically through the whole thing.
Well, I mean, this record is very much a collaboration between all of us. We all sat there and wrote it together. We didn't have a story in mind necessarily when we wrote it, but that kind of came together as we were putting the pieces together. It all kind of came together like this convoluted puzzle that
You
we had to
superimpose
shape
it.
the pieces,
Right.
and then right. But so Ninurta is the first track on Inertia, the title track, and that comes from Ninurta is an ancient Sumerian god of thunder and war and some other.
I
some
think
other wild
he
stuff.
slayed a 7-headed
Right.
serpent. I think.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where the 7 comes.
So that's
in.
where the 7 comes from, which is an important. The odd factor is an important part of the double album. Just a theme that goes through it. So the song is in 7/4, and that kind of inspired the search for something 7 related.
Yeah.
And then there was also a giant thunderstorm that knocked out the power to the recording computer one night.
Yeah. While we were chanting.
Yeah, we were chanting
whoa, 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 whoa. So you hear that at the end of the record, and the big thunderstorm knocked the power out, and we were worried that we had lost some of the sessions, but it ended up all getting recorded and saved.
Nice.
And yeah, so that's where that comes from. And then Brian,
click save all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Brian did some Googling, I think, and found the story of Ninurta.
And it just felt like it fit really well. And we let it inspire whatever. We had like 1 day left, 2 days left or something like that. At that point, we had a little bit of time left.
Yeah.
So we kind of like had a premise going forward into the final days, of which there were only like 6. So final days.
Yeah.
Is it tougher to walk into the studio with nothing and say, all right, we got, 5 days total, we're going to be here, we have to come up with something? Or is it easier, do you find, to walk in with a book full of songs already?
It depends, definitely. Like, if you're going in and you have a song written that's like very technical, that can be hard to nail, and sometimes having that pressure of like knowing you have to nail this can be difficult. There's something like really special and inspiring about going in with nothing written that you're not really sure what you're gonna get. You don't know if it's gonna be good. But there's something like a weight lifted because of that. Like I feel kind of the opposite of what you were saying, where you go, oh, we have to write something. It's almost just like, we're gonna write something. We're gonna write something. I know that. Yeah, and so, it's really fun to do that. But you can hit writer's block or things like that sometimes that make the process a little more.
I found it interesting. Your album before was called The Stories We Write for Ourselves, which is much more singer-songwriter, song-oriented than the thing you did, which fascinates me. I love that you guys have the 2 sides. What were the differences in the approach and the recording of those 2 separate projects?
I wanted to go back to the story of the Ninurta real quick.
Oh, sure. Definitely.
Yeah, there's like so looking at the track listing, we described like Ninurta and how we got the basic premise there. But then the next couple songs, Our Space Heroine and Picking Apples Off the Apple Tree, was kind of like a vague, like, female main character driving through space theme, kind of surrealist.
Even the apple tree, huh?
Yeah, kind
religious.
of like, well, not religious, but like
religious imagery. How about religious imagery there?
Yeah, we can take that. Yeah. And
which is good stuff. You put something like Job or Eve somewhere, they're going to do what they're supposed to do for your song or your story.
The people will understand.
The people will understand. Yeah. Good point.
And that's a flashback too, like in the story of the space heroine. Like, imagine during track 2 is driving through space,
like chilling, like one.
Yeah, and then but there's some angst or something. There's a flashback to some simpler times. that goes into track 3.
All right,
Picking
and
off-
then what moves the story forward then with the next songs?
Well, the apple tree is kind of like the car coming to a stop, and that's where Lewis is kind of talking about the nostalgia factor of like leaving Earth behind. And in the story of The Year the Earth Is Still, you kind of leave Earth a little bit, and eventually you come back at the end of Inertia with Underneath the Summer Sun, where you're just like sitting in the pool, and it's all just been a little bit of a dream. You come back to yourself. So this is kind of where you take off. And it's just like it's supposed to evoke feelings of childhood nostalgia, in the grand scheme of things, especially with the space race coming next, like kind of this robotic, angsty call to action, like movement to arms, an aggression
Right.
like level, which is a nice contrast to the previous instrumental. It also, that in particular is one that just happened improvised. We were recording our Space Heroine as a take, and we just went into that and we decided to make it a second track. So that was a more so random creation.
Found music.
Yeah. And the space race was one of the few ones that we had that was planned when we went in the studio. We had the basic guitar idea and the idea that we wanted to maybe use some samples, and that's what occurred.
Yeah, and Ben went and found that JFK speech after the fact and just dropped it in there. And I think right where he dropped it the first time is where we left it. It was perfect.
Yeah, so as far as like thematic anchors, that was the only anchor we had on Ninurta. And so we knew we were going to have to deal with space because we had this idea to call it the space race, you know. So that was the only anchor we had for that one. And then on Inertia, we had one song planned as well. But that was it. I hope that like told the actual like story, like why we ordered them a little bit better.
Yes, definitely.
There's the pink flying saucer theme, which is like aliens coming to visit you, and sometimes you wish you could be taken away. And then they come for you, but they leave you behind in Ninurta. And then they come back at the end of Inertia, and this time they take you with them. Yeah.
Okay, very nice.
I'm serious. That's literally what we were talking about. It sounds crazy.
Yeah.
No, I love it. You got to have that. I was going to ask you guys, how important do you think building a mythology is for a band in building a fan base? Like the Grateful Dead did, you know, they used the Western thing, the gambler, that was their mythology. And then Fish created the whole thing with Gamehenge and lots of other bands. You know, I remember this band Grinch years and years ago did an album called Wilbur. And it was basically retelling Gamehenge, you know, but they were trying to do something to build community. Do you think having a mythology, something like this double album, helps to bring people in and keep them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not something that I had thought about as like a mythology of the band. I guess because we're literally like existing in it. It's our lives. And I guess it feels like it becomes mythology like once you know, over time and when people really catch on. But I do feel like we have some characters that come about in the music. Like there's this character called Josefina, and she's on a couple of in Space for Days, and she comes back a bit. And,
in Stories? Did she come back in Stories?
Yeah, I think she's the character from Lady I Love.
Yeah, to bring it back to the Stories we write for ourselves, that's kind of on a parallel existence. I kind of see it as like there's the year they're kind of existing in parallel, the ideas of the records, and sometimes they intertwine or cross paths, but each album kind of is its own universe, maybe. Well, not its own universe. Maybe its own universe in a multiverse theory.
There you go.
And then there's other characters like Shanti the dolphin.
Yeah.
Like we did the nautical aquatical. And so those are kind of things that I think people really connect to. You know, people love to hear about Shanti, and they love to hear stories about.
That's the thing that ends up on a lot shirt when you get big enough. Those kind of songs.
Right.
That's, you know, kind of the thing I'm getting with. It's what built it, because then someone else, I see you at the grocery store, and I'm like, I knew that band. I know that song.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I do think that's important, is like giving the audience something to connect to that is like adjacent to the band, that is not necessarily like only people who are on the inside would know. Right. We've got this character called Lenny the Lemon.
Lenny the Lemon. Okay, what's that
Lenny
story?
the Lemon, yeah. Who like only comes out at festivals and he like it's a festival lemon. We go out in the audience and toss the lemon. And
people take bites of the lemon.
People take bites out of the lemon, and
damn.
Yeah. That's kind of a new character in our. We think he's going to be on the terrestrial equestrial, which is a follow up to the nautical aquatical about land animals.
Oh, nice. Very
Yeah.
nice. So since you did the space opera, though, you did another album which I found fascinating called Untitled California Project, and it seems like it came from a Carl Denson Greyboy vibe in California One to, California 17 is like straight ahead country rock ditty kind of thing. I love it. I love that thing.
We could spend hours talking about California Project.
Oh, it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird project.
Yeah.
But it was pretty fun. So the background of that project is that I have cousins that live in Ohio, and they have a lake, and we stayed in their house one time, and our guitar player Ben was like fascinated with their story and with their existence,
their way of life,
and the fact that they had moved to California, some of them, including one of them named Mark. And then we were talking with Mark, who works in LA and like sound editing, about doing a TV show together, potentially, or like a web series show. So we wrote like 20 to 30 little like sound bites for this like cartoony-ish like comedy info show thing. And then some of those like little snippets turned into actual songs. And they tell the story of the journey of Mark from Ohio to LA.
I love that way of doing things. There's a band out in New Orleans called the Radiators, and one time they wrote a fake set list and went out and played the fake set list and just made it
That's
up.
Funny.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. And then we did that trip.
Yeah, so we went to California is the other part of that story. Then that's why we released it this past summer, because we went to California for the first time.
Yeah.
To play High Sierra and a couple other cities.
Ooh, High Sierra. That's like the mother jewel of California festivals there.
It was great. We had 2 sets. We had a late night set and like an afternoon evening set, which was really nice.
And we've got both of those sets multi-tracked and recorded and mixed, so they'll be coming out on
Bandcamp or Nugs.
Nugs. Yeah.
Right. So
Nugs in our website too, yeah.
How'd you guys end up with Nugs? Is that just your management getting you in, or did they approach you?
Well, we've wanted to be on there for a while and haven't been able to like consistently record audio that we were happy with of our live shows.
Okay.
And then last year we got an in-ear monitor rack. We built one that can also multi-track record. So for this entire year, we've been able to multi-track and launched with like 20-ish shows at once. But it took us a while to get the workflow right.
Right.
And, honestly, we're still working on it a little bit, but it was just like finding the right method to make it sound as good as we want it to be.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you with that. I for many years was a taper, mics and soundboards, whatever. I always like the soundboard, but it kind of sounds like a photographic negative sometimes. I think matrix mixes are the best because you can clean up, the bottom, but you still feel the room.
Yeah, feeling the room is important. We have crowd mics that face the audience that we put up. And also, like, through a lot of the vocals, we all have vocal mics, so you capture a lot of air, which is nice.
Nice. I like it. I'll have to keep my eye open. The next time you guys come through Baltimore, D.C., I'm definitely going to come down and check you out there.
Sweet.
Are you familiar with the Ramble Fest?
No, I do not know that.
Yeah, check that out. That's coming up this weekend. Friday. We'll be there on Friday. I think it's right around Baltimore.
Okay, cool. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, the Ramble. This will be its first year, brand new festival.
Mm-hmm.
It totally did not catch my radar. I went out for the first time to a club in Baltimore Saturday night since before quarantine to see Pigeons Flocktoberfest.
Wow.
And that was fun. The band that opened for him, Yam Yam. You ever heard of them? They were pretty fun. They had a sax guy too.
Yeah, heard of them.
You should have a festival with all sax people.
That would be fun, actually.
Good idea.
Saxapalooza. I wanted to ask you about two big names that I think of when I think of Charlottesville, Virginia, are Hornsby and Dave Matthews, obviously. And you guys kind of are one of the few bands that have a similar instrumentation to Dave Matthews in as much as the acoustic guitar and the saxophone. Were either of those guys influences on you, or is it just happenstance that you're in the same area that they are?
Well, yeah, Dave Matthews was a big influence on me. I listened to a lot of Dave Matthews in high school, went to big phase, and partly the reason I went to college at UVA was to start playing music in Charlottesville. And so, yeah, definitely. And, it's cool to be in the same city and doing it. But I feel like we've definitely grown as a band. People used to make the comparison a lot.
Yeah, I don't hear that at all really with you.
Yeah, not so much anymore. Just
you got to start somewhere, I mean, Nirvana was ripping off, the Pixies and shit like that. I mean, that's how you learn. You got to crawl first. T.S. Eliot once said that good poets imitate and great poets steal. So do that with your will.
I'll have to use that one.
Yeah, when someone says, "Hey, you stole that from me." All right. So related to that, I know a lot of bands that are jam bands. One, don't like being called that, and two, didn't really listen to jam bands growing up. What's the case with you? Were you fans of the scene, like Fish fans beforehand, or were you musicians who fell into this scene?
It's really different for every single member of the band. We all had different musical backgrounds. So like our drummer was on the drum line and in marching band and like was aware of the jam scene, certainly.
Yeah.
Growing up.
He was really into Dave Matthews Band too, the drummer. Yeah. And big fan of Carter Beauford.
Yeah, so there's heavy inspiration there. And then our bass player grew up playing classical upright bass, and for a long time played upright in the beginning of the band and then switched to electric. And he has like a hybrid electric too sometimes that he plays or records. Nice. So he had like exposure there. And I grew up playing saxophone in the school band and like the jazz band and played in some combos. And so I wasn't really aware of the jam scene at all until I met these guys. And they taught me a lot. That and Lock-In 2017 taught me a lot. That was my first music festival, was Lock-In.
Oh, wow.
I had to Google all the bands.
Who was playing that year? I don't know off the top of my head.
Wait, I have the poster right here.
We played it. Yeah, Humphreys McGee.
Humphreys, String Cheese, Phil Lesh and Friends, Dead and Co. Right? Or no, just Bob Weir.
Dude, we've got a fucking great spot on this poster.
Yeah. Who else is up there?
It's lined up. It's lined up by day, and there was only 4 bands on Thursday, and so we're like on the top row.
We're the top row. It says String Cheese Incident, Humphreys McGee, Disco Biscuits, Kendall Street Company, and that's how it felt.
Yeah,
we were the
that
first.
That was your moment. That was the first moment you knew it was possible.
That shit was awesome.
That's when they had the rotating stage.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if they're having another festival, but yeah.
How long had you been together at that point?
That was 2017. Mm-hmm. We got together 2013. 4 years.
I joined the band in 2016.
And before that, you had a separate sax and keyboard players?
Yes. Yeah, we had the sax player and I grew up together in Virginia Beach and went to UVA together and roomed together. And we had started playing together a little bit back before college. But then we started like playing more together and formed the band with Brian and Ryan, who are still in the band. And then we picked up Ben, who's probably the most ingrained in the jam scene prior to he was like really into Fish.
He loves Fish, and he's been in bands like his entire since he could like walk.
Yeah,
he's been in bands.
Yeah. And it's really cool because like I was really into Dave and he was really into Fish, and so we could kind of get together and like meld those a bit. And I used to say, yeah, Ben. Sorry, I'm trying to.
What do you used to say?
There's a line that I had. Yeah, like while Ben was learning Van Halen, I was learning Van Morrison, and so we're a good team,
Yeah, you need a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Right.
So I got the sax and the acoustic guitar guy here, and one of my questions was unique instrumentation. You have the sax and the acoustic guitar in the same band with the basic electric setup around you trio. How does that inform what you do live? In as much as does it restrict you, or does it allow for explorations that you wouldn't do with a regular 5-piece 2-guitar, keys, drums, bass?
I mean, certainly both. For a long time, I just played sax in the band and didn't play keyboards. And we had 2 other keyboardists since I've been in the band.
In succession, not at the same time.
Yeah, not at the same time. Who chose to do other things. And then we didn't have a keyboardist for a while, but it was about the same time I was starting to play with synthesizers more. And so I decided to give it a shot. And that was also when the pandemic hit. So there was a lot of time to practice.
A lot of downtime, right?
Yeah, a lot of downtime and a lot of time to practice piano. And since then, I've just, pushed myself to learn to instrument. I felt like we really needed it and I wanted it. And I was capable of it. So.
It definitely adds some nice things that you can go back and forth and have both things, I love having a saxophone in the band. It's fantastic. And it's severely underused. I mean, you have like Galactic who does the funk thing with it. You have Dave Matthews, but there isn't a lot unless you want to go jazz, then you'll have a sax guy kind of thing. So very nice.
Yeah,
very
I love the presence of the sax and am open to having a keyboard player again for what it's worth if you're listening and you think you want to play.
We'll put that out there then.
I'm serious. I'll put it out there. Yeah, why not?
Hey,
Yeah, we're waiting on the right one though. We all like, I mean, keys could be really cool to have live in the touring band, it definitely adds another element.
And for like the year the Earth stood still, that was the first. I played a little bit of keyboards on the stories, but the year the Earth stood still was the biggest like keyboard project. So I'm playing most of the keys on that record, if not all of them. Our producer played a few like synth parts as well. So how it informs our writing and playing live, like I don't really think about the live performance of it when we're writing the music necessarily. Because I want the music to sound the way I want it to sound, and then I'll figure out how to recreate it how I desire. I'm not worried about the studio restricting me live.
Yeah.
Especially as a keyboardist and a sax, like sometimes you're going to want those at the same time.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to let that happen.
Let's touch on the stories we write for ourselves for a minute, because like I was saying earlier, it is such a different thing. And also how you guys feel your progression as a songwriter has gone since your first albums or the first stuff you wrote. If you want to talk a little bit about your process, things like that.
Yeah. Well, the stories for me kind of felt like the first like real songwriter album since Space for Days or maybe our first full-length record, Earth Turns. And there's a reference to that Earth Turns record on the stories. There's a song called The Earth Turns, which is a reference to that, to the first album. And I wrote a number of the songs on the stories. And Jake wrote one, and Ben wrote a couple. And so, it was kind of our first stab at the songwriter record since the beginning. And that felt really good. That was in an important time for that to happen for me, because I had all these songs that I wanted to put out, and the sound of the band was kind of veering, a little jam heavy or whatever. And so, I think it's amazing and amazingly versatile that we're able to put out a songwriter record, you know, in the vein of like Wilco or something like that. And
I
also
love
have,
it. I think it's sorely
Yeah.
needed in a lot of jam bands. I'll say it. I think a lot of the lyrics suck for a lot of what goes on out there in jam band. Even some of like Trey's new stuff I cringe at, but I really enjoyed what you guys were coming up with. I just think it's so much harder to write a quote unquote meaningful song than it is to something that's just fun and goofy. You know, aside from the technical, I
Yeah.
guess I'm just talking about the lyric, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely I'm, you know, as a songwriter, I feel like I've developed a ton since the beginning, and you know, since I started songwriting, and I've honed in on more of like what story I'm trying to tell rather than having a kind of a vague idea of what it is. But then I still draw inspiration from some of the old stuff that I wrote, and you know, there's a sense of innocence, you know, in those songs and those songwriting that makes it really special, I feel.
Sometimes the old stuff, when you break it back out, you're like, it does have a new light, or where you are in your life at that point makes it relevant, you know? So
Yeah. It's really interesting, and it's really interesting what other people will think. Like, oh, that's amazing, and I go, oh, that's, you know, mediocre at best, you know. So,
you can never. I always say I have a degree in poetry, and I always say that when you write a poem and you give it out to the world, it's like you're putting your baby out there to be slaughtered because people are just going to be
Right.
merciless and crush it. But you have to just be willing to do it, and hopefully the baby will come back to you, and it's stronger for it, maybe.
The Stories We Write for Ourselves was the first song that I wrote that got recorded and released, which was Dear White Old Moon, which I sing on the record.
Nice.
So that was fun for me.
What was that? Was it nerve-wracking singing on a record the first time?
It was pretty nerve-wracking. In general, recording can be nerve-wracking.
I'm sure. I got to get this right. I got to get this right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a limited amount of time and a limited amount of willpower, and you have to get what you need. So it can be a little anxious, but singing, it felt natural and fine. I had practiced it for a while, and I was like ready. And the producer, I also trusted to make it sound good. Scott Gordon is his name, and nice. He also mixed the Earth Turns, and he mixed the Untitled California project.
So he's your guy now, basically.
What did he mix one other thing too, right?
He did the California. Did you say California?
Yeah, I thought he did.
He did Space for Days, Earth Turns.
Oh, Space for Days too.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question with a very long answer, I was chill.
Okay.
I was chilling.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So, what do you guys listen to when you're not listening to your own stuff? What do you put on to relax?
It's different all the time. I go through different phases, you know. Let's see.
Wood Brothers are my new favorite band. I mean, I've known them for a long time, but I haven't like distinguished them as my favorite band until recently. And it's weird because I don't really have favorites of anything. Like I can't give you an answer if you ask what my favorite movie is or my favorite food. But yeah, favorite band, Wood Brothers. I think they're fucking great.
I've really been into Big Thief recently.
Oh yeah.
So that's what's been getting me. Shaky Graves. This band called Woody Pines, Tedeschi Trucks.
Talk about putting out albums. Tedeschi Trucks with the 4 LP set this year. That's pretty crazy.
That's intense.
Yeah.
And apparently they've been doing the whole album, one whole album each night at their Beacon run. Like the first night they played the first album all the way through.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is. Have you guys played yours through yet? The whole space opera in one sitting?
We did it.
We played the space opera?
We did Ninurta in Louisa or Licking Hole.
Yeah,
Licking Hole Creek
Goochland,
in Goochland. There's a brewery called Licking Hole Creek in Goochland.
We got licked at the creek.
Yeah.
Lewis and I, but we were able to play it live. It's hard because it uses a couple different instruments that aren't our normal fare. So the Barry sax is on that record. The Iwi is on that record.
Isn't there a banjo maybe?
There's a banjo on the Stories. Yeah.
We have played Stories live. We have Stories live on Spotify. We played it.
Yeah. We did that. That was cool.
in the beginning or in 2020. In 2020? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think so. Must have been, yeah.
So you guys, you put out, you had your couple albums, 3 albums in 3 years. Are you working on a new one? Or are you going to rest on your laurels for a little bit?
We've got one in the bag, ready to release. Exciting. Yay.
What's it called?
It's called Separation 95 is the name of the album. All one word. And I'm sure we can share it with you, perhaps. And it's 8 songs. It's a good 38 minutes long, kind of inspired by Dark Side of the Moon length. I don't want to tell too much, but it has a Grateful Dead cover on it.
Oh, nice, interesting.
I'm gonna
have to think on that.
About it.
Nice. And when is this coming out?
Think about what it might be.
It's a pretty fucked up Grateful Dead cover. It's awesome.
Immediately, I go to their early stuff immediately, but Born Cross-Eyed or something is where my head goes when I think about you guys doing it for some reason.
Well, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. We'll at least be able to share that one with you. That'll be the first single. Will be that cover.
And when does this come out?
We're not at liberty to say yet. So.
Mostly because we literally don't know. We're shopping it around to labels, so we're kind of seeing where that lands.
Nice.
Yeah, we recently finished the mastering process, and we finished the art, and it feels great. So
very nice.
Yeah.
And are you guys on the road now? Or are you chilling at home, or
we're chilling at home for this week, and then come Saturday we will be on the road for 33 days straight. So
wow,
this is our last week at home for a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you guys be safe out there on the road. I think we're gonna wrap this up with you guys. Amanda wasn't here. We might have gone longer, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff. Were you guys happy?
I was gonna say JJ Cale. That's another songwriter and music I've been listening to recently.
Oh,
really
love that.
Digging into JJ Cale.
What's that album? Really? The one Really he has with
I don't know, really. I love Troubadour, and I love Naturally.
Naturally, yes, Naturally.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Jesse Winchester? Kind of reminds me of J.J. Cale. He was he didn't want to go in the Vietnam War and moved to Canada, which basically killed his career. But look him up, Jesse Winchester. Some really good songs.
Cool, will do.
Very nice. And thank you guys so much. When do you think you're going to come through Baltimore?
Well, the Ramble Fest is the closest one, and that's when we play on Friday. That's on
Friday.
Technically in Darlington, Maryland. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll have to look that up. I'm going to see Bobby Saturday night, so I don't know if I can get someone for the kids 2 nights, but I'm going to try to come down there and check it out.
Right on.
Yeah,
nothing is too far in Maryland. Huh?
Oh yeah, we'll be doing our own set, and we're also playing a super jam set with the Dirty Grass Players.
Oh, neat!
If you know them.
And you're going to be recording this.
Yeah, as long as everything works.
As long as everything works. Very nice. Well, thank you guys so much for taking some time. And we're going to post some information about you. I'm going to probably next week, at the end of the next Monday when our episode comes out, we'll put out part of this. And then I think we'll release the whole thing maybe a couple weeks after that as a standalone episode. But I'll keep you in touch with you guys. And I'm mostly on Twitter. She's on Instagram. So we should have it covered with finding you guys. And I really appreciate it. It was so great meeting you.
Great to meet you too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for having us. I hope your kid heals up.
Yeah.